Hello. Good evening. Actually, I'm not sure when you are listening this and watching this interview with Aaron Gibbs, and you got some time basically to share a little bit. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Peter Hrubo, and I lead a team at Compass Josea Venture Slovakia. And basically, the reason why we exist is we would like to be part and to see a movement of God among youth that finds its home in the local church and transform society. And Aaron said yes to this interview. The reason why we are doing these interviews are we would like first introduce a Compass staff or JV Slovakia staff who are working and who would like to basically see and be part of what God is doing in Slovakia among young generation. And the reason is that you would understand like who is here, who we are, and also so that you would know how people are gifted, and maybe it would help you to basically to understand better how we could serve you in your location or in your ministry if you live in Slovakia and maybe even abroad. Who knows? You never know. Well, behind us there are few interviews now. This is in English. Usually with the Slovaks we do that in Slovak. This will be in English. I will try to speak English. It's not. This is the third language I'm using, but I will try my best. But I'm not important in this. Really, who is important is him, and then Aaron, who is going to share. And I hope that. And it should be about him and about what God is basically what God calls him into, and mainly about him who called him. So, Aaron, welcome. It's really great to have you
Ciao,
here.
Dakujem.
And I've got few questions. We will see how it will develop. Also,
Dobre.
maybe somebody would like to chat or ask through Instagram or Facebook, or who knows how you can reach me, but you will find out the ways, and then we can ask also these questions if we have time. But let's jump maybe first with some kind of introduction. If you could share a little bit about you and about your family, whatever you like. Where do you come from? Where do you live now? A little bit about the family so that we would get know you better. So
yeah, great. Sounds good, Pecho. So I have a couple of pictures here I want to show you. This first one is a picture of my family. Let's see if we get it on here.
Yeah,
do you see a picture of my family?
Great.
Okay. So this is my wife, Megan, and we have Mom Tli Dieti. I have 3 sons. Asher is 9, Lincoln is 4, and Beckham is 3. And Beckham is 4, Shtidi. This photo was taken on the front steps of our house in Spokane, where we're from. And I have another photo to show you where we lived in America.
And yeah, if you can explain where the Spokane is, because
exactly,
probably,
yeah,
great.
So I have a map. We'll see if it shows up. Do you see a map?
Mm-hmm. Super.
Okay, so this is the United States of America, and there are 2 dots in the top corner. The first dot is Seattle. Seattle is where Megan and I both grew up, and it's the place where companies like Amazon and Microsoft and Boeing, Starbucks, they all have their headquarters there. And then the other dot, which is, let's see, Da Pravo to the right, is Spokane. And when we got married, we were going to university in Spokane. And so we began our lives there and raised our kids there. So basically all of our time was spent in Washington. That's the state up there in the corner.
How far it is from Spokane to Seattle?
It's about a 4-hour drive.
Oh, it's a long trip.
But with kids, 5 hours. So it's opposite sides of the state. And really there's mountains that divide it, similar to Slovakia, where there's kind of mountains in the middle. And so I know like in Slovakia, there's east and west, and they're very different places. And that's the same in Washington. They're both very different places, different climate, different culture, different values. And so we got to experience both of those growing up and then raising our family.
Great. Thank you for the pictures. Maybe a little bit more about you and Megan. How did you met, or if you are willing to share a little bit about this, to bring this kind of romantic aspect into our conversation, to be really sweet.
Well, I won't give you all the details, Petro, but
I don't require it.
Megan and I met when we were 17. Let's see. Desat, Idennas, Sedem Desiat, 17?
Sedemnast.
Sedemnast. See, that's why I just started language school. So I will try anything that I know in Slovak, I will try. And then you can correct me so people can kind of see how that progression works. But we started dating when we were 17 in high school. And then we both moved to Spokane for university at Whitworth University. And then when we were 22, we got married. And Megan was in nursing school when we got married. And so we stayed in Spokane. And our plan was to maybe move back to Seattle. But we got connected with a great church and we both got jobs in Spokane. And Spokane was much more affordable. The cost of living, it was cheaper than Seattle. And Spokane had snow. We really liked the snow. Seattle doesn't really get much snow. So a lot of reasons.
Do you ski also? So can you ski?
Megan and I both played sports like basketball and those things are in the winter. So neither one of us grew up skiing or snowboarding. We were always in the gym playing basketball in the winter.
Mm-hmm. Great. Where is that romantic aspect? Like
the romance. Well,
like
this is how it started. This is how it started.
Mm-hmm.
Was so Megan and I went to different high schools. I went to the public high school, Bellevue High School, and Megan went to the private school, Bellevue Christian High School. And so at lunchtime, I would drive my car to her school and I would leave little notes on her car on the windshield. And so after class, she would go to her car and she would get these little notes on the car. And it would say like, I'm thinking about you, or like, let's get a coffee.
Did you sign that, those notes? Or
she has to know it's from me, of course.
Wow.
Yeah, it was, yeah. So that's how it started. I would leave her some notes. And then I was very famous. Not really, I was not very famous. Yeah, we had a mutual friend. I had a friend, Andrea, and Megan had a friend, Andrea, and Andrea kind of introduced us to each other. And then we had a group of friends who would do a lot of things together. And we just really started a friendship first. And then we started to think maybe we would want to take this friendship further. And so then we spent 5 years dating before we got married.
Great. And after you started dating, how much time did it take until you would marry? You get him.
Before we married, it was 5 years. So we started dating at 17, and then we got married at 22.
Good, great. Thank you. I heard something about your wedding and about the weather, but maybe now it is not the time to talk about it. But somebody would probably ask you one day what was wrong with the weather, and maybe nothing was wrong.
Yeah, there's a story about our wedding day, which is interesting. Yeah.
And what was interesting? Okay, we can open.
Okay, fine.
Sometime.
So we got married in the summer on July 20th, and if you look at the records for that day on July 20th in Seattle, it never rains. For 100 years, it did not rain on July 20th. And then our wedding day, it was raining all day. And so it was an outside wedding. And so we weren't sure what we would do. But then the ceremony was like 5:00 in the evening or something. And right before the ceremony was supposed to start, the rain stopped. And so we took all the chairs and set them up really quickly and had the ceremony outside. And then as soon as the ceremony was done, it started raining again. So we had a big tent. We all went under the tent. So it was just kind of
it was well
just
orchestrated.
orchestrated. God's hand
Super.
was blessed us with no rain for the ceremony. And we have Megan's dress was all muddy. Our shoes were all muddy from the rain. And it was a wedding you never forget.
If you would ask Megan, would she say like it was a good day, or
it was still a great day.
Yeah,
still a great day. Yeah,
great. And the truth is that the important event is after. Many times people are preparing for this one day, and they don't care much about what will follow, which is more important.
Right.
When did you move to Žilina?
We moved to Žilina about 9 months ago, last December, right before Christmas, and we spent a lot of time trying to get here, and we wanted to arrive sooner, but God had different plans, and we're thankful we got here with enough time to get settled and figure out kind of how to navigate this new foreign place before COVID started. It could have been a lot more complicated with COVID, but we and another blessing was we got our like a residency card, our permit visa to live here. We received it a week before the quarantine started. So the timing of us getting here in December and having enough time to get our visa was just amazing.
That's amazing. And also you mentioned that you would like to be here sooner, but when I'm evaluating the process of, from making decision and acceptation that, hey, let's come until you would arrive here. It was really, really fast. Probably you were the fastest family who gets here, which is not easy, especially in these days. And with 3 kids and with all that, that's not a small family. So it means also, and something that there are behind you. There is a big crowd of supporters and partners who love you and who believe and trust you. So just it's really great. Super. Maybe we could touch a little bit like what was because it's not normal, it's Washington, far away in Slovakia, how somebody could get and not just get for a trip or for a visit, but really move. If you can share a little bit about this story. Like how the calling looked like, or how
there's lots of different ways that we get to tell this story, and so I'm looking forward to sharing one version of the story with you and the people watching. But basically, the way that we share our story of getting to Slovakia was God led us here. That's really the only explanation for us, because a few years ago I couldn't tell you where Slovakia was on a map, but we had a desire to want to be disciple makers with our life, and for our life to be about the gospel, and for people to come to understand that for themselves. And we went through this process of, I think, just realizing that God was doing something in our life and inviting us to consider going to a place to help, because there's places all over the world where the gospel is needed, and where Christians should be living out their faith and using the gifts that God's given them. And there's also like kind of specific invitations that God does, or leading that He does. And so we spent a season listening to maybe where God would be leading us. And so we said, God, we think you want to send us to a place, but we don't know where, what that looks like. We thought maybe that could be someplace else in our city, someplace else in our country. But the more time we spent listening and discerning, talking to people in our church and our leaders, we felt that we were supposed to explore something beyond anything that we could ever imagine. And that was an international consideration. And part of this goes back to my story dating Megan. When we were 17, we were at a winter camp, and we heard a missionary tell us his story of responding to God's invitation to serve in a different country and being a vocational missionary. And Megan and I both had a conversation that night, and we thought, hey, what do you think about what this guy talked about? Would you ever like go someplace if God called you to go? And we both said yes. We both said, I don't know if God ever will. I don't really feel like that's something that I really want to do or need to do, but if God kind of called me to do that, we would obey. And so early on in our relationship, that was something important to both of us, that, okay, we don't know if God ever will, but if he does call us to leave everything and go someplace, we would want to obey and do that. And so that, we didn't know what that would look like as a 17-year-old kid. But as a 32-year-old, when we started this process of discernment, we were reminded of that night.
Yeah.
Of us
and
both
usually
kind
it
of
is
saying that.
easier to say yes when you are 17,
Right,
and you
exactly.
have nothing, empty hands and probably also pockets, and then suddenly when you are 30, over 30,
right,
suddenly you have some property, and not just the property, it's also about the family, because you got 3 kids and grandmas, grandpas at home. So then it's a little bit different story. But I enjoyed, and I like that there was that kind of first initiative or initiating when you hear that calling and you said yes to that, and the Lord took it seriously. But I wonder how it was when you were over 30 and when suddenly this was like more like a reality.
Exactly.
If you can share a little bit about this this like processing, and it would be great.
It felt like we have there's a thing called a funnel, where you pour water into something and it gets very small. And so it felt like we didn't know like the answer, like the final destination to where God was leading. But we just took many steps of faith and obedience. Like we would take one step forward. I think like the next step is for us to have a conversation with this person, or the next step is for us to consider this part. And so we just kept taking the next step. And the great thing was this whole process, Megan and I felt like partners. It wasn't like either one of us was dragging the other one or trying to convince the other one. We were both trying to figure out, what is God like leading us to do, based off of our story, based off of our gifts, and based off of kind of how he has prepared us. Is there something specific that he's kind of like leading us to do, or a people to join? And we said yes to go, but we didn't know where. And then through a lot of prayer and talking with people and conversations, we were considering Europe, and then it was Central Eastern Europe, and then it was a few countries in the middle, and then it was Slovakia. And the interesting thing about once we got to Slovakia was we were talking to one organization, and this is how we knew that it was like God stirring our affections, because our prayer was that God would give us a heart for a people or a place, to really help it like be evident to us and clear that this is what God was doing. And we wanted our hearts to reflect that. And God answered that prayer by inviting us to go to, when we thought we were supposed to go to Slovakia. And then one organization said, well, we want to send you to Czech Republic. And after that meeting, Megan and I both looked at each other and we said, that doesn't sit right with us. Like that doesn't feel right. We're not excited about it. It doesn't seem like what God has been leading us to do. And both of us looked at each other and I said, I think this is God breaking our hearts for Slovakia. I think, there was just something,
but it was just a feeling from the gut.
It was a feeling in that moment, like this prayer that we had the whole time, that he would give us this heart and this peace. It was kind of like God's answering that prayer, like instead of going to check, like it really is like. And so from that point forward, all of our attention and focus was on Slovakia, that God would either open the doors or close the doors. And every step along the way, when we would make another decision, and then it was Jelena, and then it was joining Zakostolom and Kompas, was God just answering those prayers and opening those doors, and through our leaders of our church in Spokane, and through people that really know us well, other missionaries, it was like, wow, this is what God's like affirming us, that this is what God was doing and where he was leading us.
So when you was the first in Slovakia, actually, and also
That
starting
was
this with Julina, etc.
so I went on I came to Europe to help at a conference in Poland in the fall of 2017. And I had a friend who lived in Slovakia, Dawson Jones, and I met him, and we drove to the conference in Poland together. And at that point, wasn't thinking about Slovakia at all, as like, this is where God would lead us. The only reason I was in Slovakia was to get a ride to the conference. But after I returned from that conference, and I met a lot of leaders from all over Central Europe, it was we were considering Slovakia after that. So then I came back in March by myself to Slovakia and visited a bunch of pastors in Bratislava, Nitra, and Žilina. And then my last meeting was with Janči Marek in Žilina with Zakostalom. And we just had the story of meeting Janči and hearing his vision for the church, and hearing about the story of how the church was started, and the kind of church that they wanted to be and the people they wanted to reach. I connected with it, and then we connected at a friendship level. And then it was just like, that was the beginning of us really considering Žilina and joining Zakostalom.
Yeah. And basically then our team asked you, the leadership team asked you to come with all family and to take part at a camp during the summer, which was pretty crazy because you were here in March and suddenly this was in July, and all do the support raising and be out of work, and it was not easy. But because you took this path, it was obviously was the proof that God is steering something and creating something new.
Yeah, within the span of 9 months, I was in Slovakia 3 times as we were discerning where God was leading us.
Great. If we could actually touch a little bit Slovakia from your perspective.
Yeah.
A little bit about maybe the places, country, people, like whatever. I wonder how would you do that, or how you would address this. Feel free if you can to share a little bit with the Slovaks about the Slovaks.
Yeah. Well, so Washington in America is considered a part of the Northwest. It's the northwest corner of the country. And so in the Northwest, the landscape is very much like Slovakia. It's very green. There are mountains, there's water. It's a mild climate. So us living in Slovakia, it feels really familiar to the Northwest as far as like what it looks like outside. So that part is similar. One thing that is very different is it's a lot older place. Like the roads, like have the rocks in the roads, the cobblestones. Like
you mean here?
In Slovakia, in Europe, it's an older country. The roads are older, stuff like that. The cars are smaller, but people drive faster here. There's this guy, Petjo Hurbo, who is...
let's don't touch this.
You don't want...
We already did some interview in the past, so they can watch it.
Okay, I'll interview you next time and tell some stories about driving in the car with Petjo.
Privately.
Okay, yeah. But the castles are just, are breathtaking. Every time we see a castle, whether it's the ruins or it's like in the ones that are preserved, or in Bojnice, like it is, we don't have anything that comes close to that in America. And we wonder if people realize that. Like you grew up here with the castles, and oh yeah, there's a castle there. There's a grocery store over here. It's just part of your normal life. But for us, it's like every time we see one, it is amazing. And the Zrmizlina is, I mean, you can't really go wrong with a 50-cent Zrmizlina in the afternoon.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true.
Yeah.
Is there something like favorite thing about Slovakia? Not just zmrzlina,
Yeah.
like maybe another meal or like whatever. What
I
did
mean,
you do?
I love the halushki. I think it's amazing. Um, we we love
Which is really
how
strange because for the foreigners, it's a little bit
I think it's
unusual.
great.
Super.
So we just call it it's Slovak mac and cheese. So we have macaroni and cheese is very normal American food, and it's just the Slovak version.
Yeah,
It's not the same, a little different, but um, I was talking to somebody yesterday about like the pace of life is a lot different. And so, for example, today in America we had two cars, and that was kind of a necessity. I have a car, Megan has a car. We go to work, we need to do everything. And in Jelena we have one car, and I think that so we walk a lot more, and it forces us to slow down. And normally I would have a calendar of all of my appointments or meetings or things I have to do during the day. And I would have to go from one thing to the next thing to the next thing. And one of my gifts, and I feel like something I'm really good at, is productivity and efficiency. And I'm good with making plans and organizing things. But the pace of life in Slovakia, and even like only having one car, forces us to plan in a different way. And part of that planning is I walk a lot more places. And actually, I find myself doing a lot of my best thinking and processing when I'm walking from one place to the next. And then so when I get to the place that I'm about to go, whether it's a meeting or it's work that I have to do, I feel like I have a different type of perspective going into doing that activity than I would if I was just driving in my car trying to get to the next place as fast as I can so that I can get done and move to the next thing. So that's not specifically just Slovakia, but it's something that we're realizing of. The pace of our life is a lot slower. And it doesn't mean that we're less efficient or doing less, but it's just we're learning how to just relate in a different way, which I think we enjoy and we think it's positive.
But also the season that found you here in the beginning,
True.
like COVID season, was
True.
it's probably was not easy. Like
Yeah.
I wonder how it was to be in a foreign country with this kind of threat and basically lockdown of everything for 3 months. And now who knows how it is going, how it will be. So how it was for you and your family in this situation?
Well, I know COVID impacted everybody in different ways. Some of the things everybody experienced, and everybody's situation is different. I try to see what are the positive opportunities in any situation. Normally, that's kind of my nature. And in COVID, it was definitely like all the plans that we had were scratched. We had all these things that we wanted to do when we got here. And the first year or 2 years of us getting here are really important for us to learn the culture, learn the language, build relationships. And so all those things were really slowed down because of COVID. And so that was hard and frustrating, and really delayed a lot of the things that we thought we were supposed to be doing. But for us, it created a lot of positive opportunities for our family to adjust to life together in ways that we wouldn't have had before. So, for example, the year before we moved to Slovakia was a crazy year of preparing and visiting friends and family. We had some trainings we had to go to. We had to sell our house and pack up all of our stuff. And so there's just a lot of things that we had to do in our life. We were kind of living out of a suitcase for 9 months. And then we got here, and then we wanted to like get settled and then start our life here. And really that got pushed, the pause button got pushed. Like we weren't able to move forward in the ways that we hoped to, but it kind of allowed us, our family, to connect in a way that was really special. And we got to do some things together that we wouldn't have been able to before. And I think it helped prepare us to enter into the fall healthy and connected, and just even have some time together spiritually of processing kind of what God was doing in our life, and even start some healthy rhythms for our family for how are we going to connect with each other and spend time with God and spend time with our community. And so it was hard, but a lot of positive things happened through it too. And then us having that 2 months to get ready, the Kompas team and our church family here really helped us to set up our house and figure out how do we go to the store and how do we go to the bank and how do we ride the bus. And we got to figure out kind of all of that basic stuff before the quarantine started. And that was really helpful so that we were able to like function.
And it also forced you to be with the kids at home. Without kindergarten, without the school, which was like, it was for everybody a new experience.
Yeah, exactly. Sure. Yeah.
Great. If we can touch a little bit of your spiritual journey, so could you share a little bit about where God was in your family? I mean, with your parents, or maybe how you became Christian, and I know that you work also for the church, which we will touch later. Can you introduce a little bit of this?
Yeah. So I'll talk about my family first. So I grew up the grandson of a pastor. So my grandfather was a pastor, and then both my parents are believers, and my dad specifically was really involved in church leadership as a kid. And then part of my story is I accepted Christ in my life and wanted to follow him at an early age. But it wasn't till I was a middle schooler where it really became real to me. So part of my story is my dad died when I was 12, and it was something that he had a condition called diabetes, and that just made his body start to shut down in the middle of his life. And but the interesting thing about my dad's story was he wasn't expected to live past the age of like 10 or 13. He just had some medical challenges as a kid, but he lived into his mid 30s, and he got married and had a family, and he actually had a rich, blessed life up until the end when God called him home. But as a kid, it's hard to lose a parent. And so I had a hard time with my faith when that happened. But there was one of my leaders in the church was discipling me and pursuing me and caring for me. And about a year after that happened, I had a moment with God where he spoke to me and said, like, his time on earth was done. And I've called him back home. And he's actually whole again. He doesn't have pain. I'm giving him a new body, all these things that were that were hard for me to kind of deal with. I got to see as actually God's blessing to actually save him and bring him back out of the broken world and take him into eternity. So after that moment where I saw God's blessing in the midst of a really hard situation, my faith just grew a lot, and I matured a lot. And I was always wanted my life to be about serving God. So from age 13, I was involved in the leadership of my youth group. And then I continued to learn how does my life not just be about going to church, but how does my life be about serving God and obeying him with my life, and everything about my life would reflect that. And that took a long time into my 20s of really trying to figure out what does the faith look like for me to be real, and for me to live that out, and for me to use the gifts that God's given me. So that's kind of a little bit of background.
Yeah. Is also Megan from the Christian family?
Yeah, so her story is similar to mine. Her grandfather was also a pastor and grew up in a house of believers. Her parents are both very involved in their church, and she also accepted Christ into her life at a young age, and was involved in the local church ministry and church family, and also was a servant at youth leader, and
And
we were all,
probably we should ask you to do also the interview with her.
yeah, that'd be
Maybe
fun.
we'll get this opportunity.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You mentioned that she studied nursing.
Nursing. Yeah.
Nursing.
Yes.
Can you share a little bit about your studies? And I know that you work for Soma, so maybe this connection, studies and then the work.
So so Megan and I both, after high school, went to go to university together at Whitworth, in Spokane. Before I went to Whitworth, I did a study abroad program in Austria. I went to a Bible school in Austria, at Tauernhof with Cape and Ray, for a semester. And then, at Whitworth studied business and accounting. And then I also did a one-year Bible school with Moody after that, and have studied theology at Western Seminary. So I have like a Bible background, kind of a business and accounting background. And then Megan studied nursing, and she was a nurse for 10 years before we moved here.
Yeah, that's for us is a little bit unusual, because usually the Christian schools colleges are not connected with the business much. It's more basically about theology, mission.
Right. Yeah.
It's really always surprised me when this is this kind of subject there.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you are like organized person. You love the processes and organization, how it is set up. And so we are looking forward one day when you will be out of this learning language period, that you will bring this also this giftedness into the organization and the ministry and the kingdom in Slovakia. Great. Maybe if you could share a little bit about like what was after the school and before here and after the school, this period. And it's probably Soma, or was there, you worked somewhere else also? Try to introduce this if you can.
So the first job that I had after school was I worked for an airline in Spokane, Alaska Airlines. And so I did station operations. So if you're going to ever travel on an airplane, anything that someone would do to help you do that, I've done it. So I've worked at the ticket counter. I've put the bags on the plane. I've worked in the cargo office. I was a supervisor for a time. And that connects to our story, to moving to Slovakia, because while I was working for the airline, we traveled a lot, because you can fly on a plane if there's an empty seat for free, or for very low price if you're an employee. And so we traveled all over the country of America. We did international trips once or twice a year. And so that kind of exposed us to the world in a way where, like for a lot of people, they've either never left the country, or they don't even feel comfortable like with this idea of going to a foreign place where you don't know the language, or you have to figure out how do you catch the bus, or how do you find your hotel. And for us, that was very normal and kind of adventure, and something that we enjoyed. So even like there's lots of little things that a part of our story, a part of our life, that helped us to be able to say yes to coming to Slovakia. And that was, I think, one of the big pieces. So I worked for the airline for 5 years, and then I accepted a position at our local church, Soma Spokane, where I did a lot of operations things, where I would build some systems and help lead our staff, and then just part of the leadership, and then became an elder there. So my role was kind of like executive pastor, where I would help. There was the lead pastor where he would shape the mission and the vision of the church. And then my job was basically to help, okay, how does our church fulfill that calling? How do we steward our resources with people and money, and our kind of like programs, our ministries. So that was, I got to do the kind of the detail side of the church, but also working with the people and help develop leaders. And it was honestly, Petra, that was my dream job, because I got to work with people, and I got to work with systems, and I got to do that with a church that I really loved.
That's really great. And we are actually, as Compass, in the phase when we are looking for these COOs, so that they would basically help in this area. And Timo is involved in it, but he should take my position to be a leader in 2 years of the organization. So, and we have like empty spots for this as well. Although the truth is that your giftedness is wider. So, and maybe it's connected with another question, and it is, what do you dream to do in Slovakia as work, as the calling, as the ministry? If you can share a little bit about this.
So what part of our story of saying yes to come to Slovakia was, we wanted to join a team. We wanted to, we know our strengths and our weaknesses, and we know our gifts, and we know kind of how God has designed us. And part of that was we wanted to come and help something that was already started. And so that was the church plant, Zakostalom. And that was kind of what our hope for ministry would be, was that we could help strengthen a local church, and help strengthen local churches. And can we make disciples and develop leaders so that there would be stronger churches and more stronger churches in Slovakia. I mean, because that was one of the things that I noticed when did that first vision trip when I was in Poland, was I saw that there was amazing things happening over here. There was great leaders, and there was passion to follow God and to lead churches. But the reality is in Žilina, there's only a handful of churches in a city of 85,000 people. I mean, in my neighborhood in Spokane, our city has hundreds of churches. And so just there's need everywhere, but there's greater need in certain places in the world. And so when we moved to Slovakia, it was, we want to be a part of the movement of the gospel that's happening here. And you talked about what's the vision of Kompas. We want to be a part of the movement of God in this part of the world that finds its home in the local church and transforms society. Okay, but for that to work, you need to have local churches, and you need to have not just one but many, and they need to be healthy. And so we came from a very healthy church in Spokane, and if we want to be a part of God's mission, be a part of His movement, be a part of reaching people for the gospel, we can't all stay home. And so we need to go to places where there's greater need. And God calls and invites certain people into going and being sent to those places. And so, we're excited to be a part of Zakostalom, and we're excited to be a part of Kompas, to continue to invest in leaders, and that leaders that would be involved in local churches, that they would be a part of the body, and that connects. That's the vision of Soma, is that we are the body of Christ. We are many parts, but we need all the many parts working together to reflect the fullness of what God has for His church.
Yeah, and we as a Slovak, we really need these new expressions of the church, and of course it's necessary to have also the old ones and with the tradition, but young generation needs a new way how they can live the spirituality. So it's also needed So thank you for joining this dream and this need in this corner of the world.
Mm-hmm.
If we could get back to the ordinary day, how would you describe how does your typically day look like?
Is this I guess it depends. Is it during COVID? Is it this week? Is it next week?
I mean, let's say this week. How does it look like?
I know. It's just so crazy because it can change from one day to the next day. Yeah. But so this week is more normal. This is kids are in school, so we're not doing the homeschool stuff. So I get up in the morning, and I spend time getting the kids up and ready. They get dressed, get their breakfast, get ready, and then Megan drives them to school. Beckham is in Shkoka, and then the older two are at the primary school. And then we have a dog. He's a 6-month-old. Oh, I should have had a picture. Oh, well, he's a French bulldog. If you can just Google French bulldog, he's 6 months old. So after Megan takes the kids to school, I take Rainier for a walk, and then I get back home and get him all set up. And then Megan and I, we just started language school at the university. So that starts at 9 o'clock. So we head over to the school for 4 hours in the morning until 1 o'clock. And then after that, we have lunch, and I usually come to Compa's office, or I go to the church office and spend the rest of my day trying to get all of the language stuff out of my head so that I can focus on the other tasks that I have for the day. And then at the end of the day, we like to have dinner together as a family. And we try to invite some people over once or twice a week from the church to connect with them. But then honestly, Petro, after we put the kids to bed, I'm getting ready for bed because it's been a long day. And but it's pretty.
Yeah, we don't realize how tiring it is in a foreign country, and when you need to use a different language and basically to be in this environment. And many times it's for sure, it's really tiring. That's my experience also when we studied in England.
Yeah,
it was not fun. It was fun and it was not fun. It was hard work. And many times I felt that I'm not efficient enough.
Well, here's one thing that I think is helpful for people. So there's been a lot of people who have done some study during COVID, and a lot of the symptoms that people experience during COVID, of the fatigue and the tiredness and just because your brain is concentrating on things that it's not used to. A lot of the things that people experience during COVID is what foreigners feel like when they move to a new place, because you have to read every sign and try to understand what it means. Every decision that you make during the day, you have to think really hard about. And so it makes you mentally exhausted, physically exhausted. And a lot of people during COVID experienced that, with just everything was uncertain. You have to try to figure out whatever. So
yeah, that's brain can function on autopilot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
So then it's really tough. So maybe let's move the page, and we have 10 more minutes.
Okay.
Let's touch maybe your hobbies and the family hobbies, if you can share about this.
Yeah.
It would be really
great. Megan and I both grew up playing sports, and we enjoyed athletics and playing sports, but we also we like that sports are a way to connect with people, and a way to teach people about life. And so we continue to be involved in sports and get our kids involved in sports. So back in America, I would coach our kids' sports teams, basketball or baseball, or I'm not much of a soccer football player, so I was just watching that one. But that's something that we are trying to do here as well, is get our kids, but COVID is making that challenging. We also like to be outside. So we like to go camping. We like to be in nature. And so we're excited to do more of that in Slovakia. We don't have a lot of like other things beyond that. You know, a lot of our things revolve around our family and around church life. But we just like having, inviting people into our life. So if that's dinner or if that's just, we're going to do an activity, people come with us.
So how is it with the neighborhood? Do you feel like the people around you get knowing you, or how do they respond, or can you communicate? Do they speak English, or
Trošku.
How is that?
Yeah, right now we're renting a house in the city, and it's an older neighborhood, so we have a lot of older neighbors that don't speak good English. But if you walk around like the streets, there are some families and some people that speak English. So, but when we moved here in December, it was winter and it was cold, so we didn't see anybody. Everybody just stays inside during the winter. And then we had a little bit of springtime where people started to come outside. And then it was COVID where everybody went back inside again. So we really didn't get to connect with a lot, but we've connected with a few, and some we actually know really well. One of the teachers at the Skolka lives 2 houses away from us.
Oh, that's great.
One of Asher and Lincoln's classmates lives on the street above us. And we've gotten to know at least the names of all of our neighbors, and a little bit about what they do through some hand motions. And if there's a friend over, then we'll have them translate for us a little bit.
That's super. And you are kind of, attraction for the Slovaks. So for sure you can use it to
so a funny story is we had someone coming to our house, but they couldn't find our house number. And they just stopped and asked one of the neighbors, like, do you know where Pribanova 3 is? And they're like, the Americans. Yeah, they're, everybody knows there's these Americans.
It's small village, of course. You use this well. That's great. Is there something interesting about you would like to share with those who are watching this interview and normally wouldn't get a chance to
so there's one funny thing that I like to tell people. When I was a kid, there was this movie called Space Camp. Did you ever see this movie, Space Camp?
I don't think so.
Okay. So it's actually one of the popular things I've noticed that we've been here in Slovakia. I'm not sure if it's popular in America right now, but there's all these T-shirts that say NASA, and it has the spaceship. I don't know why it's popular right now, but in America, there's 2 places where you can go to train to be an astronaut. And one of those is in Huntsville, Alabama. Yeah. And that's where they launched the ships into space. And they also have a program where kids from all over the country can come and learn what is it like to be an astronaut.
Yeah.
And they get that you be the pilot, you be the whatever. And so when I was 10 or 11 years old, there was 2 kids from my school that went to Alabama to do a week at space camp. And it was kind of like a nerdy thing to do. Like, it wasn't like a cool thing to do.
Oh, really?
But there was this movie, Space Camp, where some kids did the same program that we did. But they accidentally got on a real rocket and the kids went to outer space. And so for me, it was like, am I going to be like one of these kids and go to outer space? So in America, it's a funny thing for me to tell people was I went to space camp.
That's great. There was also this kind of instrument that would shoot you up with the same, speed. I don't know how it's in English, preťaženie. So you can experience there a lot. I remember. That's great. Super. We have a few minutes. I wonder if there something you would like to share from your heart with our audience, a verse or something that God has been teaching you, or anything like that.
Yeah, I did have a verse that I came across yesterday that I thought I might share. I think it's Second Peter, 2 Peter verse 3, verses 8 and 9. And I'll just read it real quick. It says, "Do not overlook this one fact, beloved, that the Lord one day is as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. But the Lord is not slow to fulfill his promise, as some count slowness, but as a patient toward you, not wishing that any day perish, but that all should reach repentance." And for me, that came at an interesting time, as like many people are maybe questioning what's happening with their life or the world with COVID, or in America, there's a lot of crazy things happening with race and culture. And then for me in my life, we're trying to transition to a new place and a new country, and we're realizing the sacrifice that we made of saying goodbye to our friends and our family and our home and everything that we've ever known. And so we can ask these questions to God, or we can doubt, or we can, like, why aren't we getting our answers, or why aren't we getting our way? And when I came across this verse, I just felt a lot of peace that God's not in a hurry. Like he is patient, and he will fulfill his promises. And and we look at the whole of Scripture, and we see these stories of God providing, and then people being thankful, and then the next minute they're doubting God and what he's going to do in their life. And I think just for the good news that was for me yesterday, and the good news that I wanted to share was that we don't need to be in a hurry. We don't have to have the answers now. God is working out his plans, and he is faithful, and his love never ends. And we have to remember, like, those things that he's done, not just in our life, but that we see in the Bible of being consistent. The story is always the same. Like God has a plan, and he has promises for us, and he completes them. And in the middle, we wander away, or we sin, or we doubt, or we question God and what he's doing. But he's patient, and he'll wait for us. And so what I'm trying to do for my life, and what I encourage others to, especially for those that are younger and they have questions about their life and their faith, is that God is near, and he's not going anywhere, and he will wait. And sometimes we have to slow down enough to ask the question, and to listen, and to invite other people into whatever it is that's going on in our life.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much for sharing. Thank you, Aaron, and also Megan, for all family, that you made such a bold step to come here and to serve. May the Lord bless you also in your new language learning effort. It's not easy, but it's important to understand the culture and also the language. And thank you also those who were with us and were watching till now. If you'd like to learn more, feel free to go to josiahventure.com website, or tccompass.sk website, and you can learn about Aaron and his ministry, or about Compass or Josiah Venture in this region more. So I'm not sure who the next guest is going to be, but next week somebody else will be interviewed, and we are looking forward to be with you and basically to spend an hour in talking. So God bless you, Aaron.
Dobre, ďakujem.
Dovidenia všetci.
Dovidenia.
Bye.